close your eyes for a moment and imagine your perfect home. Not the house you think you should want, not the one that would impress other people, but the one that calls to something deep inside you, the place where your soul feels it could finally exhale. Maybe at a cottage by the sea, or a modern penthouse overlooking the city, or a secluded cabin in the woods. Whatever image came to your mind just now, it wasn't random. That dream house is speaking a language your unconscious mind understands perfectly. It's revealing one of Carl Jung's fundamental psychological archetypes, the deep patterns that shape how you move through the world, how you relate to others, and what you're really seeking in this life. I'm going to show you 5 different dream houses, and the one that resonates most deeply with you will unlock something profound about your hidden psychological makeup, things about yourself you might not have consciously recognized, but that have been guiding you all along. So let's begin this journey into the architecture of your soul. Before we look at the houses, I need you to understand what Jung meant by archetypes. These aren't just personality types or categories we fit people into. Archetypes are universal patterns of human experience that live in what Jung called the collective unconscious, the deeper layer of psyche that we all share beyond our individual experiences. These patterns show up across cultures, across time periods, in myths and fairy tales and dreams. They're the fundamental ways humans have always organized meaning, always understood the journey of being alive. The house you dream of isn't just about aesthetics or lifestyle preferences. Your unconscious mind is incredibly sophisticated, and it speaks in symbols. The house is one of the most powerful symbols we have for the self, for the psyche itself. When you imagine your dream house, you're actually revealing how your unconscious wants to structure your life, what it values, what it's protecting, what it's seeking. The architecture of your dream reflects the architecture of your soul. So I'm going to describe 5 houses now, and I want you to pay attention not just to which one you like, but to which one makes you feel something, which one creates a sense of recognition, of coming home, of yes, that's it. Don't overthink this. Your unconscious already knows. Let it speak. House number 1, the cozy cottage in the enchanted forest. Imagine a small stone cottage nestled deep in ancient woods. There's smoke curling from the chimney, wildflowers growing around the door. Inside, it's warm and intimate, with low ceilings, exposed wooden beams, shelves filled with books and herbs and collected treasures. There's a fireplace, soft lighting, windows that look out onto forest. It's a place that feels protected, hidden, magical, a sanctuary away from a harsh modern world. This house whispers of old wisdom, of connection to nature, of a slower, more intentional way of living. House number 2, the glass house on the cliff top. Picture a modern architectural marvel, walls of floor-to-ceiling windows, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The structure is clean, minimal, almost transparent. Inside, there's very little clutter, just essential beautiful pieces, open space, light flooding every corner. The boundaries between inside and outside feel permeable. You can see for miles the vast ocean, the endless sky. This house speaks of clarity, of nothing to hide, of standing at the edge and facing the infinite with courage and openness. House number 3, the Bohemian Loft in the heart of the city. Envision a converted warehouse space, exposed brick and industrial pipes, high ceilings, huge windows overlooking busy city streets. Inside, it's eclectic and creative, filled with art, instruments, books, plants, colorful textiles from different cultures. There's energy here, movement, the pulse of urban life just outside. This is a space for creation, for community, for being part of something larger and dynamic. The city is your stage, your inspiration, your tribe. House number 4, the grand estate with historic significance. Imagine an elegant manor house with history in every stone, perhaps a restored Victorian or a classical European villa. There are libraries with first editions, rooms designated for specific purposes, gardens designed with intention and maintained with care. Everything has meaning, provenance, a story. This house speaks of legacy, of preservation, of understanding yourself as part of a larger continuum of human culture and achievement. House number 5, the minimalist Zen Retreat. Picture a Japanese-inspired dwelling. Simple, clean lines, natural materials, a meditation garden with carefully placed stones and a small pond. There's almost nothing extra here, just what's essential and beautiful. The space itself seems to breathe. There's a tea room, tatama mats, shoji screens that filter light softly. This house whispers of discipline, of the spiritual path, of finding fullness in emptiness, of the practice of presence. Take a moment. Which house called to you? Which one made something in your chest expand, made you think, yes, that one, that's where I belong? Remember your choice. And now let's discover what it reveals about your hidden psychological archetype. If you chose house number 1, the cozy cottage in the enchanted forest, your hidden psychological archetype is the wise hermit, and you need to understand something beautiful about yourself. You carry within you what Jung called the archetype of the senex, the old wise one, regardless of your actual age. This is the part of the psyche that values depth over breadth, quality over quantity, wisdom over information. Your soul is seeking refuge from the overwhelming complexity and speed of the modern world. But this isn't about weakness or escapism. This is about protection of something precious. You understand intuitively that depth requires stillness, that wisdom requires contemplation, that real magic happens in the quiet spaces the world has forgotten. The cottage in the forest is your psyche saying, I need boundaries between myself and the collective noise. I need a protected space where I can tend to my inner life without constant interruption. Here's what this reveals about how you move through the world. You're probably someone people describe as an old soul. You've never quite fit into the mainstream pace and values of contemporary life. While others are chasing bigger, faster, more, you're drawn to slower, deeper, simpler. You'd rather have 2 or 3 intimate friendships than 100 acquaintances. You'd rather master one craft deeply than dabble in many things. You'd rather spend an evening reading or creating than going to a loud party. Jung would say you have a strong connection to what he called the anima or animus, the soul image, the part of you that is in constant dialogue with the unconscious. You're probably highly intuitive, maybe even a little psychic, able to sense things other people miss. You pick up on energies, on the unspoken, on what's happening beneath the surface. And the modern world, with its harsh lights and loud noises and constant demands for your attention, this is exhausting for someone with your sensitivity. The cottage represents your need for a container, a vessel, a sacred space where you can do your inner work without interference. Because that's what you're really here to do. You're here to tend the inner fires, to keep old wisdom alive, to translate between the visible and invisible worlds. In traditional societies, you would have been the wise woman or man at the edge of the village, the one people came to for healing, for counsel, for connection to something deeper than the everyday world. Your hidden gift is that you understand something most people have forgotten, that the material world isn't all there is, that there are depths and mysteries worth protecting and exploring, that not everything valuable can be quantified or monetized or displayed on social media. You're a keeper of thresholds, a tender of the sacred. And the cottage in the forest is your psyche's way of saying, I need a life structure that honors this calling. The challenge of this archetype is isolation that becomes stagnation. The hermit can withdraw so completely that they lose connection to the world they're supposed to be serving. Jung talked about the importance of the transcendent function, the ability to bridge between opposites, between inner and outer, between solitude and community. Your work is to find the balance, to have your cottage, your protected space, but also to bring what you discover there back to the world in some form. You have medicine people need, wisdom they're hungry for, even if they don't know how to ask for it, in your daily life. This archetype shows up in how you need quiet time to recharge, how you're selective about who you let into your inner circle, how you value meaningful conversation over small talk. You probably have a rich inner world, filled with thoughts and ideas and creative projects that matter deeply to you. You might be a writer, an artist, a healer, a teacher, someone whose work requires solitude and contemplation. Or you might have a conventional job, but live for those evening hours when you can retreat to your sanctuary and do the work that really feeds your soul. The cottage dweller understands that not all growth happens in light, in public, in measurable ways. Some of the most important transformations happen in darkness, in privacy, in the hidden seasons of the soul. You trust this process. You don't need external validation for your inner work. You know its value even when no one else sees it. And this gives you a kind of sovereignty, a freedom from the tyranny of other people's opinions and expectations. If you chose house number 2, the glass house on the cliff top, your hidden psychological archetype is a transparent seeker, and this reveals something profound about your relationship with truth and vulnerability. This is the archetype Jung associated with the pure or puella, the eternal youth, but in its most evolved form, the one who maintains openness and courage even in the face of life's difficulties. Your soul is drawn to exposure, to edges, to the places where nothing is hidden and everything is revealed. The glass walls aren't about exhibitionism or lack of boundaries. They're about integrity, about refusing to live in darkness or secrecy, about being willing to be seen fully. And the cliff's edge, that's significant too. You're someone who's willing to live at the threshold, at the place where solid ground meets infinite space, where the known meets the unknown. Here's what this reveals about you. You have an unusual capacity for honesty, both with yourself and others. You're not interested in pretense or performance. You'd rather be real and risk rejection than be fake and be accepted. This makes you somewhat rare in a world where most people are carefully curating their image, hiding their struggles, presenting only their highlight reel. You understand that true connection requires transparency, that intimacy is impossible behind walls, even if those walls keep you safe. Jung would say you have a highly developed relationship with what he called the self with a capital S, the totality of who you are, both conscious and unconscious. Most people spend their lives avoiding parts of themselves, hiding aspects they find unacceptable, building elaborate defenses. But you're willing to look at all of it, the light and the shadow, the beautiful and the ugly, the strong and the broken, and you're willing to let others see it too. The ocean view is crucial here. Water in dreams and symbols represents the unconscious, and the ocean specifically represents the vast collective unconscious, the deeper mysteries. You're someone who's not afraid to look into those depths, to ask the big questions, to confront the mysteries of existence without needing neat answers. While others want certainty and solid ground, you're comfortable with not knowing, with standing at the edge and letting the questions be big and unanswered. Your hidden gift is that you give other people permission to be real. When someone meets you, when they experience your willingness to be vulnerable and honest, something in them relaxes. They feel like they can finally take off their mask too. You create spaces where truth can be spoken, where complexity can be honored, where people don't have to pretend to have it all figured out. This is a rare and precious gift in a world that demands we always be okay, always be positive, always be winning. The challenge of this archetype is that exposure without boundaries can become depletion. The glass house has no privacy, and while transparency is beautiful, you also need spaces that are just yours, experiences you don't immediately share, feelings you process privately before bringing them to others. Jung talked about the importance of the temenos, the sacred protected space. Your work is to find the balance between openness and containment, between being willing to be seen and knowing what deserves to be kept sacred and private. In your relationships, you're probably the person people confide in, the one they trust with their deepest truths. You have a way of making others feel safe to be vulnerable because you're so willing to be vulnerable first. You don't use your transparency as a weapon or manipulation. You're genuinely interested in truth, in depth, in real connection. And people sense this authenticity in you. You might struggle sometimes with feeling too exposed, too raw, like you don't have enough protection from the world harshness. The glass house lets in all the light, but also lets in all the storms. You feel everything intensely. Other people's pain affects you. The world's suffering gets in, and you have to learn how to witness all of this without being destroyed by it, how to stay open without being overwhelmed. The clifftop location speaks to your need for perspective, for height, for the ability to see far and wide. You're not someone who can live in a valley, surrounded by trees that block the view. You need to see the horizon, to understand the bigger picture, to place your individual experience in a larger context. This gives you wisdom, the ability to see patterns, to understand how things connect, to offer perspective to others who are lost in the details of their struggle. If you chose house number 3, the Bohemian Loft in the heart of the city, your hidden psychological archetype is a creative connector, and this reveals that you carry what Jung called the archetype of the artist or the trickster, the one who sees possibilities, who makes unexpected connections, who brings color and creativity to everything they touch. Your soul needs stimulation, diversity, connection, movement. The city isn't just a location for you, it's life force. You feed off the energy of people, ideas, cultures mixing and colliding and creating something new. The exposed industrial space represents your willingness to be unfinished, raw, in process. You're not trying to present a polished, perfect image. You're showing the scaffolding, the work in progress, the beautiful mess of creation. Here's what this reveals about how you're wired. You're someone who thinks in connections, in networks, in webs of meaning. Where other people see separate categories and clear boundaries, you see how everything relates to everything else. You can pull inspiration from wildly different sources and synthesize them into something original. You probably have eclectic interests, diverse friend groups, the ability to move between different worlds and translate between them. Jung would say you have a strong relationship with what he called the creative unconscious, the place where new forms emerge, where imagination lives, where the not yet real begins to take shape. You're probably someone who needs creative expression the way other people need food or sleep. When you can't create, when you can't make things, you feel like you're dying. And creation for you isn't just art in the traditional sense. It's how you live, how you connect, how you make meaning. The law full of collected objects from different cultures speaks to your understanding that wisdom and beauty exist everywhere, in high art and street art, in ancient traditions and contemporary innovations, in different cultures and perspectives. You're naturally inclusive, curious, open. You don't believe there's one right way to live or think or be. You see the value in plurality, in diversity, in multiple truths coexisting. Your hidden gift is that you're a bridge builder, a culture creator, someone who can bring disparate people and ideas together and help them see their common humanity. In tribal societies, you would have been the storyteller, the musician, the one who kept the community spirit alive, who reminded people why life is worth living even when it's hard. You understand that humans don't just need food and shelter. We need beauty, meaning, connection, joy. The challenge of this archetype is scattered energy and lack of depth. The trickster and artist can flit from thing to thing, never settling, never committing, always chasing the next inspiration. Jung talked about the importance of what he called circumambulation, walking around the same center repeatedly, going deeper each time. Your work is to bring some focus to your expansive energy, to choose some paths to walk deeply instead of sampling everything superficially. Your breath is a gift, but it becomes most powerful when it's channeled through some depth. In your daily life, you're probably the person with the most interesting apartment, the one who throws the best dinner parties, who introduces people who end up becoming friends or collaborators. You're a connector, a weaver of social fabric. You see potential in people and situations that others miss. You can look at random elements and envision how they could come together into something beautiful and meaningful. You might struggle with conventional structure, with 9-to-5 jobs, with routine and repetition. Your soul needs variety, spontaneity, the freedom to follow inspiration when it strikes. You're probably someone who works best in bursts of creative energy, who has multiple projects going at once, who gets bored easily if things become too predictable. The urban setting is crucial for you. You need the stimulation of different people, different ideas, different experiences. Isolation would kill your spirit. You thrive on exchange, on collaboration, on the generative chaos that happens when diverse elements interact. The city is your playground, your university, your art studio. Everything you encounter becomes potential material for your creative work. If you chose house number 4, the grand estate with historic significance, your hidden psychological archetype is the cultural guardian, and you carry what Jung called the archetype of the ruler or the steward, but not in the sense of wanting power over others. This is about responsibility, legacy, the understanding that we're all links in a chain that extends far behind us and far ahead. Your soul is drawn to meaning that transcends individual, to the sense of being part of something larger and more enduring than one lifetime. The historic house represents your understanding that the past matters, that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before, that wisdom and beauty have been accumulated over generations and deserve to be honored and preserved. This is a nostalgia or resistance to change. This is respect for the depth of human achievement. Here's what this reveals about your psychological makeup. You have what Jung called a strong superego, but in the healthiest sense, an internalized set of values, ethics, and standards that guide you. You care about doing things right, about quality, about excellence. You're probably someone who feels a sense of duty, who takes commitment seriously, who understands that some things are bigger than your personal desires or convenience. You're likely drawn to institutions, traditions, systems of knowledge that have stood the test of time. You might be involved in education, in preservation of some kind, in work that connects past to present to future. You understand that every generation doesn't need to reinvent the wheel, that there's wisdom in what's been proven over time, that novelty isn't always better than tradition. Jung would say you have a well-developed relationship with what he called the collective consciousness, the shared knowledge and values of your culture. You're someone who can hold and transmit cultural wisdom, who understands that society needs people willing to maintain its beneficial structures and institutions. While others are rebelling against all authority and tradition, you're able to discern what's worth keeping, what serves human flourishing, what connects us to our highest values. The rooms designated for specific purposes, the gardens designed with intention. This speaks to your understanding of order, of proper function, of things having their right place and purpose. You're probably someone who values ritual, routine, structure, not because you're rigid, but because you understand that these things create containers for meaning, for depth, for the sacred to emerge. Your hidden gift is that you're a keeper of what matters. In a world obsessed with the new, the disruptive, the revolutionary, you understand that some things deserve to be conserved. You're the one who remembers, who teaches, who passes on. You're maintaining the connections between generations, holding the threads that keep the social fabric from unraveling completely. This is crucial work, even when it's not flashy or celebrated. The challenge of this archetype is becoming so identified with tradition and structure that you resist necessary change and evolution. The ruler can become tyrannical, the steward can become rigid. Jung talked about the importance of the shadow, and for someone with your archetype, the shadow often contains the wild, the spontaneous, the irreverent. Your work is to honor tradition while remaining open to evolution, to preserve what's valuable while making room for what's emerging. In your personal life, you probably have certain rituals you observe, certain standards you maintain, certain principles you won't compromise. You might be someone who collects things with history, who values craftsmanship, who prefers quality over quantity. You understand that some things improve with age, that patina and where can add character rather than diminish value. You're probably someone younger people turn to for guidance, for wisdom, for a sense of continuity with something larger than themselves. You have a way of making people feel connected to history, to tradition, to the accumulated wisdom of humanity. You help them understand that their struggles aren't new, that humans have always grappled with these questions, that there's comfort and insight in knowing we're part of a long lineage. The library with first edition speaks to your love of knowledge, your respect for ideas that have endured, your understanding that some books and concepts are foundational and deserve to be returned to repeatedly. You're not someone who just consumes information and moves on. You study, you contemplate, you integrate. You understand that wisdom takes time to develop. If you chose house number 5, the minimalist Zen Retreat, your hidden psychological archetype is the spiritual ascetic, and you carry what Jung called the archetype of the monk or the mystic, the one who understands that less is more, that emptiness is fullness, that the path to enlightenment requires radical simplification. Your soul is seeking liberation from the tyranny of stuff, of complexity, of the endless accumulation that modern life pushes on us. The Zen aesthetic isn't just about design for you, it's about a way of being. You understand that every object you own owns a piece of your attention, that complexity creates confusion, that clarity requires ruthless editing of what you allow into your life and consciousness. Here's what this reveals about your deepest nature. You're someone who's on what Jung called the individuation path, the journey toward wholeness and integration. But your particular flavor of this journey involves stripping away rather than adding on. While others think growth means acquiring more knowledge, skills, relationships, possessions, you understand that sometimes growth means letting go, releasing, emptying. You're probably drawn to contemplative practices, meditation, silence, solitude, not because you're antisocial or depressed, but because you've discovered that truth emerges in stillness, that the noise of the world drowns out the quiet voice of the soul. You've likely experienced directly what the mystics teach, that beneath all the thoughts and feelings and sensations, there's a vast aware presence, and connecting to that presence is what you're really here to do. Jung would say you have a highly developed relationship with what he called the self, the transpersonal center of consciousness. Most people are identified with their ego, their thoughts, their personality. But you've glimpsed that you're something larger, something that witnesses the ego rather than being the ego. And once you had that glimpse, it changes everything. The things that seem so important, the achievements and acquisitions and dramas, they start to feel less compelling. The meditation garden with its carefully placed stones represents your understanding of sacred space, of intention, of the way environment shapes consciousness. You know that where you live and how you live isn't separate from your spiritual practice. It is your spiritual practice. Every choice, every object, every moment is an opportunity to practice presence, mindfulness, conscious awareness. Your hidden gift is that you're a living reminder of what's possible when we stop running, stop accumulating, stop performing. Just by being who you are, by living according to values that run counter to consumer culture, you're offering an alternative vision of what it means to be human. You're demonstrating that happiness doesn't come from having more. That peace doesn't come from achieving more. That wholeness is already here if we stop long enough to notice. The challenge of this archetype is spiritual bypassing, using the path as an escape from life rather than an engagement with life. The ascetic can become cold, disconnected, using detachment as a defense against the messiness of being human. Jung was very clear that true individuation doesn't mean transcending the human. It means integrating all of it, the spiritual and the earthly, the transcendent and the embodied. Your work is to bring your stillness into movement, your emptiness into form, your inner peace into outer action. In your daily life, you're probably someone who lives very simply, who doesn't accumulate much, who finds joy in the basics. You might have a regular meditation practice, a morning ritual, habits that ground you and connect you to something larger than your small self. You're probably careful about what you consume, not just food, but media, information, other people's energy. You understand that you're porous, that everything you take affects your state of consciousness. You might be someone who takes regular retreats, who needs periods of silence and solitude to reset, who finds noise and chaos genuinely painful. You're highly sensitive to your environment, to energy, to the quality of space. You can't just live anywhere. You need a space that supports your practice, that feels clean and clear and conducive to inner work. The Japanese aesthetic of your chosen dwelling speaks to your appreciation for beauty that's simple, natural, unforced. You understand that the most profound beauty often comes from restraint, from knowing what to leave out, from honoring the space between things. You see the sacred in the ordinary, the extraordinary in the simple, the infinite in the minimal. Now, as we come to the end of this journey through the architecture of your soul, I want you to understand something important. Your dream house isn't fixed. As you grow, as you individuate, as you integrate different aspects of yourself, you might find yourself drawn to different houses at different times. Jung believed that wholeness means developing relationship with all the archetypes, not just the one that feels most natural to you. So if you chose a cottage, there's also a part of you that needs the cliff house's transparency. If you chose a Zen Retreat, there's a part of you that needs a Bohemian Loft creative chaos. We contain multitudes. We're not one thing. And the journey of individuation is about making space for all these different aspects, these different ways of being, these different needs and gifts. But the house that called to you most strongly today, that's showing you something about where you are right now, what you're needing, what aspect of yourself is asking to be recognized and honored. Pay attention to that. Your unconscious is speaking. It's showing you what kind of container, what kind of life structure would allow you to become most fully yourself. I want to ask you now, which house did you choose? And more importantly, did the archetype I described resonate with you? Did you recognize yourself in it? Or did it reveal something you hadn't consciously known, but that feels true now that it's been named? Drop a comment below and share your house and whether the interpretation landed for you. I love hearing how these explorations resonate with people's actual experience. And here's something to think about. Even if you can't live in your literal dream house right now, how can you bring elements of it into your current life? If you chose a cottage, how can you create more sanctuary space, more protection from the noise? If you chose the glass house, how can you practice more transparency, more willingness to be seen? If you chose a loft, how can you feed your creative soul? Bring more color and connection into your days? If you chose the estate, how can you honor what's worth preserving while remaining open to growth? If you chose the Zen Retreat, how can you simplify, create more spaciousness, practice more presence? Your dream house is a map, a blueprint your unconscious has drawn for you. It's showing you what your soul needs to thrive, what kind of life structure would allow your particular gifts to flourish. You don't have to build the literal house, but you can build the life, the practices, the relationships, the daily rhythms that create the same feeling, the same alignment between your inner nature and your outer circumstances. Jung spent his entire life studying how we become whole, how we integrate all the scattered pieces of ourselves into something coherent and authentic. And one of his deepest insights was that the psyche is always trying to heal itself, always trying to move toward wholeness. The images that arise from your unconscious, in dreams and fantasies, in the houses you're drawn to, these aren't random. They're messages. They're your psyche showing you the way home to yourself. So thank you for taking this journey with me today into the deep architecture of your inner world. If this resonated, if it helped you see yourself more clearly, share it with someone who's also trying to understand themselves on this deeper level. We're all walking each other home. We're all trying to figure out who we really are beneath all the conditioning and expectations and masks. Until next time, remember that you're not just building a life. You're building a self. And every choice you make, every environment you create, every relationship you nurture, these are all part of the architecture of your becoming. Build consciously. Build true to your deepest nature. Build the life that allows your soul to finally come home.